Hey, Blake. Hey. And welcome to everyone who has joined in so far. We'll probably give it a few more minutes for people to kind of start coming in before we get started.
Filling up. We'll probably give it another 2 minutes and start around 6:05.
All right, well, it looks like it's 6:05, so we're going to get started. And we have, let's see how many people. I love that I can see. Okay, like 15 people going on here, plus some panelists. So welcome to everyone to our April monthly movement meeting for Close the Workhouse. Our first of probably a lot of Zoom meetings, but we're excited that we all still get to connect. So I'm just going to start us off with some introductions of the people who are going to be on the panel, who are going to be speaking today. And so for those introductions, I'll have us do name, the pronouns that you use, and the organization that you work with and your connection to Close the Workhouse. So I can start. My name is Madison, and my pronouns are she, her. And I work at Arch City Defenders in the Department of Community Collaboration. So I work alongside Inez Bordeaux. And we do a lot of the advocacy work for Arch City Defenders. And our city is obviously one of the founders, core partners of the Close the Workhouse campaign. And I'll pass it to Jay next.
Hello, how are y'all doing? My name is Jay. My pronouns are they, them, theirs. I work as an organizer for Action St. Louis. We organize to build power. I Workhouse campaign. Inez sends her love. She couldn't be here today. She was in a car accident earlier this morning. So keep her in your thoughts and well wishes. I'm gonna pass it over to Blake.
Hello, everyone. My name is Blake Strode, pronouns he, him, his. I'm executive director of Arch City Defenders, the partners on the campaign.
And lastly, we'll go to Kayla for a quick introduction.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. My name is Kayla Reed. I use the she series pronouns, and I'm the executive director of Action St. Louis, which is one of the core organizations that leads the Closed Workhouse campaign.
Great. Well, thank you so much to everyone for introducing themselves, for all the panelists for being here, and for everyone who's joined so far. So we always start with like a little icebreaker, which is typically a fun game where we get active and move around, but it's a little harder to do with all of us being so far apart and everything. But we're talking, and a big thing that this time is really hopefully teaching some of us to do is to take some time to practice some self-care. And so we wanted to know how you all have been practicing self-care now. And so we have a chat section that you can chat in, and you can like type something to all panelists, so we'll see it. And then I'll read off like some of the things that people have been doing for self-care, and then you can like have some ideas if you have been feeling like you can't figure out what to do these days. So if you guys go ahead and start putting some stuff in there, then I'll be able to read it and we can talk about what we've been doing self-care wise. All right, let's see. Someone said walks. I love walks. Also been trying to do those, so that's good. It's been nice weather. Walking the dog. Someone said sunbathing. That's quite luxurious. Um, and we also have long walks. So if you want them even longer, someone painted their nails. I love that. That's great. Walking a dog, cooking, yoga, and at-home workout, all from one person. So they are really killing the self-care game. Take some notes from them. Spending time with family, Zoom happy hours, of course. Yes, lots of offices are doing those now. It's a fun little interaction with everyone. Meditation and staying hydrated, reading lots of great fiction. That's good. Working more than I thought. That's true. That's probably the realest thing on here. Calling family, that's great because sometimes we can't go see them because we have to distance. Journaling, cooking and baking more interesting things. Please share. I love that one. Please share your food, your recipes, etc. How about some of our other panelists? What are some of y'all doing for self-care in these times? Anyone can go. See y'all all laughing. So you must have something to say.
Yeah, I think we're laughing because we've all been insanely busy since this moment has, I think Action is on week 3 of working from home. And that just doesn't even seem real that it's been 3 weeks. And I think it's Thursday. It could be Monday. It could be Sunday. I'm not exactly sure. So yeah, but I guess like what I've been doing, I've been cooking more, but I'm also very tired of washing dishes. So that's like is this self-care or do I have to eat? Like, which one is it, you know? But my dad, I've been like FaceTiming my family, not FaceTiming because they have Androids like Blake, but I've been video chatting them. And so I found out about this app, Google Duo, and my dad is immunocompromised, and so I haven't seen him in all this time, and so it was really good to see him this week and like talk to him, and he was very happy that he has video chat now, and he was like, this is what all the kids are raving about, and it is. So hopefully now he gets it.
That's great. Blake, Jay, in all the busyness, any other self-care suggestions or things you've been doing want to pass along?
I feel a little self-care shamed by that lovely list that was provided. I'm not doing most of those things. Though I did go the last 2 evenings at about dusk. I went with my dog on a bike ride with his leash attached to my hip, and that was nice. So that's what I'm gonna try to keep up with the doggy.
Yep. Shout out to Barley.
That's great.
I too have been spending lots of time with my dog, doing walks, long walks in the park with my dog, and hanging out, some really quality intentional time with my partner. So that's been nice.
Awesome. Well, it's cool to see what everyone's been doing. And hopefully, if you've been having some trouble thinking of things or just feeling kind of trapped and overwhelmed, maybe some of these things could jog something in your mind for what you could do. So I want to make sure and say that this meeting is being recorded. So if you have to leave at any point, you can't stay the whole time, then we'll be able to send out that link afterwards. And so you can pass along to people who also weren't able to make it. And this is also currently being live streamed on YouTube as well. And I just see that someone asked what I do for self-care, which is,
Yeah.
I didn't say, so that's true. I've been trying to do more art. Somehow something in my soul told me to go to Michael's like right before all this happened and get a lot of art supplies. And so like now I like already have the tools that I need to like paint my soul away. So I've been trying to do that a lot more. But yeah, so we want to move into a time of updates. Updates from core organizations here with the campaign. And so we're going to start with our first update from Arch City Defenders, which is going to be Blake. So I'll pass it over to you, Blake.
All right. See what happens when Inez is not here and I'm like a bad fill-in, but I'll do my best. So we've been busy at Arch City, really trying to engage in a lot of advocacy, which for purposes of this meeting, especially, a lot of that advocacy has been focused on trying to get as many people as possible out of cages and prevent people from going into them in this moment. We know it's always harmful and dangerous for folks in jails and prisons. And right now with this virus, it's deadly. It's even more deadly than usual. So we've been doing a lot of things. You may have seen a couple of petitions that were circulated. The first one around March 13th was a petition that had 6 different categories of vulnerable communities in St. It actually was statewide, so it was St. Louis City, County, but also statewide. It focused on groups like the unhoused, the working poor, people in jails and prisons, folks coming into contact with police, people with disabilities. I think I forgot one. Oh, courts was the last section. And that petition got about 1,800 signatures. Thank you to everyone that has been signing on to that. If you know someone who hasn't, have them sign. It's since been placed on an advocacy hub that I'm going to let Kayla talk more about. But we're trying to collect all of those, all of the kind of advocacy efforts happening right now and track progress along the different calls to action. So that petition was one big effort. Another was aimed at the Supreme Court, where we sent a letter, and this letter had about 30 organizations and individuals sign on to it, that went to the Supreme Court asking that they direct courts across the state to release more people from jail, either people serving short sentences or pre-trial, that they release more folks to reduce the jail population. And that was really importantly accompanied by a memo by a Dr. Fred Rotnick, who actually used to be a chief medical director in the St. Louis County Jail for like 15 years. He wrote an extensive memo explaining why jails and prisons are not and cannot be safe places for anyone in this moment, no matter what they tell you about the sanitation protocols and about the social distancing. They just are not safe in this moment, and it's explained in depth in the memo that he provided. And that was signed on to by 16, I think, medical and public health professionals. So we presented all of that information to the Supreme Court, and we also made that in an online petition, which is also on the advocacy hub, which is stlcovidhub.org. So that's a couple of the big advocacy pushes we've had. And then the other thing I will name is we filed some new litigation, or we filed a new motion in existing litigation that we for sure want all of you to know about if you haven't heard already. So if you've been at movement meetings since last spring or summer, you probably remember a lot of conversation about our bail litigation. At the beginning of 2019, we brought a lawsuit against the city of St. Louis, judges, sheriff, challenging the way that bail works in the city. And basically, we've been locking people up just because they don't have the money to pay without making any of the fines that the court is supposed to make, without collecting the information, without inquiring into a person's ability to pay before they set that monetary bail amount. So people are just sitting in jail because they don't have some arbitrary amount in their pocket. Well, last June, we got what's called a preliminary injunction. What that did was it required that the court actually engage in these really intensive hearings on the front end that they are required to by the Constitution, or they couldn't hold people in jail. So within 5 days of getting that injunction, we saw something like 120 people released from jail. The jail population in the city of St. Louis started going down immediately following that, even though the injunction was only active for about 5 days, started going immediately down, and it's kept going down actually since that point. What we've done now, that injunction actually was stayed by an appellate court. After a lot of steps, they ended up reversing the injunction and sending it back to the federal district court where we started and said, take another look, see if these new rules that are in place have fixed the problem. Well, surprise, they haven't fixed the problem. And we've had lots of folks in court, shout out to the Court Watch people. We've had so many people going to court, watching hearings, seeing what happens, and making an extensive record to show that they're not following the Constitution and they're not even following their own rules. So what we've done in light of this extreme emergency of the COVID-19 outbreak is we went back in the federal court, we filed an emergency motion asking for the judge to renew that injunction, which would mean that once again, they would have much closer oversight of the hearings. They would have explicit findings they have to make. They would just make it harder to lock someone up just because they can't afford to pay bond. And if last time is any indication, it also means that it would prevent people going to jail unnecessarily and get some folks out that shouldn't be there. So we filed that motion on Monday. We asked for what's called an expedited briefing, because this is obviously a really urgent issue. We asked to get in court quickly and air this out. And we'll keep you all updated on what's happening with that case. But that's another way that we're really trying to leverage all the tools and resources we have to get and keep as many people out of cages as possible. So I think that's it as far as my updates go.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Blake. I'll go ahead and toss it over to Kayla next to talk about action, since some of what you have to say was kind of connecting to what Blake was talking about.
Yeah. Thank you, Blake, for always throwing me under the bus. So as Blake mentioned, Action St. Louis is one of the organizations that signed on to the demands, and then a partnership between Action and Arc City, which is, normal, and the St. Louis American, we actually developed a site where we are holding the demands and tracking the demands with opportunities for folks to plug in to target those who are in power, who have the ability to actualize the demands that we put out. So I'm just going to share my screen really briefly so that you can see it. This is probably why Blake tossed it to me, because he's technologically challenged. So this is stlcovidhub.org, and on the site is the Arch, but also the petition that was mentioned that you can still continue to read and sign. You can see our demands. Again, this is a partnership between Arc City, Action, and the St. Louis American, and the organizations that signed on to demand list can be found at the bottom. And there was, what we have done is, if you click on the advocacy page, on the policy demand page, it kind of gives you the headings of each of the kind of areas that we focused on. and then the kind of sub points of each of those headings. So, and then we have an action key that's color coordinated that lets you know if actions have not been addressed or completed regarding the demand, if actions have been addressed but not completed, if some actions have been taken but it's not the full demand, and if things have been completed or if we don't know the current status. And so then if you click on one of the sub demands, it gives you the status, it gives you an update on the steps that were taken, and it gives you who to contact. And if you click on who to contact, it will take you to a site where you can talk to the person that you clicked on, to send them a message around that particular demand. And so, again, the kind of sub points are the working poor, the unhoused, the police and ICE, courts, jail detention, and people with disabilities. We encourage you to look at the site, see how many areas have been addressed, have not been addressed, need to be further addressed. And then in addition to that, there are the sites and the kind of letters that Blake mentioned earlier that you are able to see the full statements of, and any other kind of advocacy work that's happening statewide. So some work on the KC side around tenant organizing. And then also there's some updates which are generated from the St. Louis American around, updated information around the COVID-19 crisis. And then there's a way that you can generate a printable contact list. So one day you just decide you have time on your hands, you can call everyone and let them know that you want to see action. And then in addition to that, there's a research page that takes you to We Power site. That's a joint venture between We Power Arch City and the Clark Fox Family Foundation that just has kind of non-advocacy educational resource information that you can look into. So that's the website, and we're super excited about it. We hope that you take a look at it. The other site that I'll mention where Action is a partner is a statewide advocacy site. It's called Act Now Missouri, and it has some statewide demands from organizations that you know and some that you don't know. You could take a look at the different things like expanding Medicaid. Right now, we not only have the 200,000 families that didn't get the expansion because Missouri didn't opt in to the expansion of the Affordable Care Act, but all the children and families that Parsons has kicked off the list are hyper vulnerable in this moment because they don't have access to insurance that would be provided. So it covers a lot of issues. You could take a look at that. We're really excited to have some state synergy, some statewide synergy. Governor Parsons is not doing a lot. And so these are more targeted at our state legislature and the governor. So take a look at that site as well. And what else did I want to mention? Oh, I wanted to mention the census. How many of you have done your census? Your faces, but I hope that you have done them. And if you haven't done it, you have until April 15th. So you should get your census. You should have got something in the mail that looks like this. Let me open this chat. Oh, somebody did theirs yesterday. That's what I'm talking about. So you got something in the mail that looks like this. It has a code on it. You go to 2020census.gov. You take 6 to 7 minutes to fill it out. On average, it doesn't take folks more than 10 minutes. You can also call the census to fill it out over the phone, or you can mail it in if you so choose. But it is online for the first time, and you should absolutely complete your census because there's so much at stake around the census, including money for our hospitals, our schools, insurance, and politically, all the maps are drawn based on the census. We have a ward reduction in the city of St. Louis that's coming up that will be dictated by the census. Our state legislative maps are drawn by the census. And in 2010, we actually lost a congressional seat due to an undercount. St. Louis was severely undercounted. And so we launched We Count 314, which we've been calling. Hopefully you got a call from us. Maybe you've seen the graphic online, or we had a challenge where people submitted songs and videos and raps. You can go on our Facebook page, Action St. Louis's Facebook page, to see those. We gave away, $500 to folks who submitted a challenge. And so we're really trying to engage the community around the importance of doing the census. We feel like, some of us have some time on our hands. So this is the time to get it done. And if you talk to anyone, just check in with them about making sure that they do the census. Because this is about money and it's about power, and we need our money. We need access to the power that is ours. I didn't mean for that to rhyme, but it did. The other thing that I wanted to mention was Medicaid expansion. We've talked about it in our movement meetings before. Very excited to say that Medicaid expansion will be on the ballot this year. We are going to turn in those signatures whenever we physically can. But we have taken in enough signatures to qualify for the ballot. Which is timely. Who knew that we were going to put Medicaid expansion on the ballot and then be in a pandemic of, just who knew that it was going to happen, but it's happening. And so we are going to put it on the ballot, and then we're going to pass it in November. So just stay tuned for that, around ways that you can plug in for that. And then the last thing that I will mention is that tomorrow, come back to join Action Arch City for a landlord tenant know your rights session. So this is a conversation about housing rights between activists and organizers. Our team and our city, two of their lawyers will be on to give a presentation about your rights in this moment. We know that there's a lot of conversations happening around rent and mortgage. There are some moratoriums that have been passed. What do those actually mean? Statewide, what's happening? Locally, what's happening? Is your landlord telling you something? Do you have questions? Do you know someone who's renting that has questions? This is a conversation that you should join. It's tomorrow, April 3rd at 2 p.m. Central Time. It's going to be similar format as this, where we'll be on video, we'll record it and share it. But we really wanted to make sure that, because we're at the beginning of the month, that folks are able to ask questions, because this is a new moment that we're in. It's a new situation, and we don't want folks to not have the information that's really important right now. So you can find that the link to join that on Facebook, and where all the flyers are on Instagram. If you're subscribed to our newsletters, you probably got an email today about it. So be sure to spread the word on that and join in if you can. And I think, I forget anything, Blake? Jay? I think that's it. Yeah, I think that's it. Do your census, check out our websites, and know your rights.
Thanks so much, Kayla. That was all super helpful information. And yes, doing your census literally takes like 2 seconds. It's super fun. I'm like, wow, I feel like I'm making history here. So you should do it.
You can.
I'll pass it over to Jay next to do some updates for the bail project.
Yeah, Bill Project has built out nine people yesterday. We're seeing more and more bill reductions. So as we're seeing those, they're getting more and more folks out. Currently, there are 136 people in the workhouse.
Sorry, Jay, you were frozen for a second. So if you could repeat what you said after 136 people in the workhouse, once your camera starts going again.
Am I back? Okay, my internet's horrible, y'all. So bear with me. Yeah, so there are 136 people in the workhouse, and there are 617 in CJC, and that all wouldn't be possible if it wasn't for the Bail Project. So that's my update.
Can we just pause there for a second, though?
Yeah.
Because when we started this campaign, there were over 600, or was it 700? Over 700?
I think it was, yeah, somewhere between 6 and 7, maybe.
Somewhere between 600 and 700 folks were in the Medium Security Institute, known as the Workhouse. And as of today, I feel like Finesse is on the call, I'm trying to channel her energy. Y'all, as of today, there are 136 people in the workhouse. that's almost a tenth of the capacity of the entire facility, 136. And it's still open, and it should not be open. But that is hard work over 3 years to depopulate a facility, and that is, you know, a deep piece of that is because of the Bell Project's continuous work to go in there every single day and figure out ways. They've been working with the prosecutor and the public defender's office and our city defenders and service providers to really push on that in this moment. But 136 is like, y'all know 136 people. It's 136, you know, like that's closer to zero than it is to when we started. And that is, that's encouraging that that's happening. So shout out to the Bell Project.
Yes, that is such important work, and those numbers are just so wild. We have some graphics that we're eventually going to be circulating that it should show like the capacity of the workhouse versus how many people are actually there now, and it's just like staggering to see that. So we really appreciate all that work that's been done. I'm going to give a quick update on court watching. The main update is that it's postponed because there's not a lot of that happening right now, and we need to social distance. They want to make sure that everyone is following them on Twitter, and I'm a really bad moderator who doesn't remember the Twitter handle, so I'm looking it up on this moment so I can tell you what it is.
Court Watch STL.
There we go, Court Watch STL. I've heard it's a really good feed. I've looked at it. I look at it. It's a really good feed, but lots of people will be like, "You looking at that feed?" And I'm like, "Yeah, that's some good stuff." So follow that. And then I'll toss it back over to Jay to do some CTW updates, and I can jump in if there's anything else.
Thank you, Madison. So yeah, when it comes to Resolution 205, we are currently at a bit of a standstill since the Board of Aldermen is not meeting. We have 4 out of 7 of the Public Safety Committee who are in agreement with closing the workhouse. So we have enough to pass it out of the Public Safety Committee. But again, they're not meeting. So we're trying to deal with how to get movement and get them meeting in the middle of a pandemic. All of our organizing has been turned over to digital. So trying to figure out and share graphics. And I'm gonna talk about some call to actions later around that y'all can do to work towards closing the workhouse while you're quarantined in your house. As far as Resolution 205, that's all I have as an update. If anybody else has any more of an update.
Oh, Kayla, were you gonna say something? Because I was gonna say
I was
no.
gonna say that so many people, if you pay attention to city and county politics, I won't say, I don't want to be super critical today, but the county's running laps around the city with regard to their infrastructure. And one of the things that the county has done is figure out a way to have tele meetings of their legislative body in lieu of the kind of social distancing requirements that have been put out by the regional leadership. And the Board of Aldermen has not figured that out. And so the president of the Board of Aldermen, Sir Lewis Reed, he's on Twitter at Prez Reed, may need some encouragement. And so if you just want to send him a nudge that should say, our democracy cannot collapse in the middle of a crisis, and he needs to figure out the strategy to convene the Board of Aldermen so that our legislative body, the body closest to the people, if you remember, I'm just a bill on Capitol Hill, the legislative body, our most direct representatives, are able to introduce and pass policies that impact our everyday lives. And so he is the person that is impeding that process. I don't know if he's impeding it, but the Board of E&A has figured out a way to continue to meet, but the Board of Aldermen has not. And so that's just something where, you know, we're going to be ramping up our demands around it, because if the board is not able to convene and the committees are not able to convene, the resolution will die in committee. And so the only thing stopping us right now is while we can still social distance and our democracy can still persist. Legislation can and should be taking place right now. If Congress can do it in DC, the Board of Aldermen can do it in St. Louis.
I 100% agree, as I feel like all of us on this feed do. So later on, we're going to show you a list that we've compiled of basically all of the elected officials' email addresses and Twitter handles, including Louis Reed. So, and that's something that we'll send out. We've sent out before, we'll send out again after. So just trying to make it really easy for you to find out exactly where you need to go to talk to the people who are intentionally making your life a little bit more difficult and the lives of pretty much everyone. So thank you all so much for those updates. If we think we're done with that, we can move on to the next part. And Blake and Kayla, not sure if you're planning on staying for the whole meeting or have to leave after the update section, but if you're staying for the whole time, anytime you kind of want to jump in as we're talking about things, feel free. So I want to mention this before I forget. So I don't know how many people are doing Zoom things really frequently now, but there's a Q&A section, and we're going to have a time where we answer questions at the end of the meeting. But if you have some questions now that you want to go ahead and start putting them in there, we're going to answer all of those at the end. So just letting you know that function's there. And if you have anything, put it down and we'll talk about it at the end of the meeting. So now we're going to kind of shift and just talk about, the main thing that's been going on in the campaign right now, just the urgency of closing the workhouse in this age of COVID-19, and just how this is a really significant moment and what that means. And so I'm going to pass it over to Jay to talk a little bit more about that.
A public health problem from the severe mold and the rats and the roaches and the lack of air, inadequate medical care. And now with COVID-19, it's in the state of public health crisis. It's the perfect breeding grounds for a deadly virus. People currently being detained at MSI have inherently limited ability to fight the spread of COVID-19, especially since they're confined in closed quarters and you can't social distance in a jail. It's extremely possible that a worker could as they enter and leave, could pass the spread of COVID-19 in the jail. We've seen that happen in cities like New York. They don't practice proper sanitation in the workhouse. I've heard of folks having to wait for 2 weeks to get a bar of soap. That, under the CDC's regulations, is horrible. The facility is constantly kept unclean. Like I said, we know that people being held at the workhouse don't have proper health care. And Mayor Lyda Crewson tweeted earlier this week that if you see folks gathering in more than groups of 10, to report it to the Citizens Bureau of Services. And we're asking folks to report Mayor Lyda Crewson. We're going to talk about that later also. But she hasn't given out a plan to deal with the COVID-19 outbreak in the workhouse. We know that lockdowns and placing people in solitary confinement are punitive and ineffective responses to outbreaks, and isolation further endangers people. We know that almost all 136 people currently in the workhouse are still awaiting trial and presumed innocent until guilty under the law. So, there's ongoing incarceration is an unacceptable risk for every incarcerated individual, as well as for all of St. Louis. And we're spending $16 million locking 136 people up. So now that we understand a little bit more of what the spread of COVID-19 could mean inside of our jails, I want to take some time to talk about what you all can do from your homes. Also want to let anybody jump in if they have anything else to say. Okay. So we recently made a graphic, and I want to take some time to talk about that graphic, Madison, and pass it to you if you want to talk about the graphic that has all of the call to actions on it.
Yes, so it is putting the finishing touches on this, and we're going to be sending it out with the information after this meeting. But basically, we've been trying to compile all of the asks that we've been making of who to call, what to ask them about, what's going on, because we've realized now there's just so much. At first it was resolution 205, and then it was lighted for this, and now it's lighted for this, and this person and this person. So we want to make sure it's going to be all in one place. So I've made like a condensed flyer that basically has who you need to contact, what all their social media handles are, and basically what you can be asking them about and different questions. And it has like 6 or 7 big asks on there, and that's something that we're going to hope can be pretty interactive with people. So if you're looking out on our social media, we might say like, hey everyone, today do like numbers 1 and 2 on the organizing checklist that we gave you, and then you can go there and do that. So that's going to be a big part of what we're doing. But a lot of the main things on that, it's contacting Lyda Cruzen, Mayor Lyda Cruzen, asking why she refuses to close the workhouse, even though she's restricted public gatherings to no more than 10 people. And that has her phone number, email, and basically every way to get to her. Also, Mayor Lyda Cruzen has been hosting daily Facebook live streams called Live with Lyda. And so these are moments where she's kind of talking about COVID-19 and also just different issues and things impacting the city, just trying to give updates. And she answers questions from people's comments and text messages. And so we're going to ask people to go over and to be commenting and to ask questions about the workhouse and about why it's still open and what her plan is. She kind of gives half answers sometimes, but it's really important for her to know that every day that people are wanting that accountability. And so that typically happens. Some days it's been at 1, other days it's been at 2, but that information is on the sheet that will be sent out to everyone tomorrow. And then we're just going to be trying to hit like the city government and the health department through like their social media things, just to keep asking this question of why is the workhouse open? Like, how is this kind of hypocrisy being allowed to let stand, that we're sitting here and saying, report on people if they're gathering in more than 10, yet you have all these people crammed and crowded together who shouldn't be there. So that's what that is going to be. And that's a big component of how we're going to try and push out some organizing efforts. Another thing that I will put on the screen to share really fast, as if my technological skills are there, is this little quarantine routine graphic that we put out the other day. So like a big thing is like trying to make this new routine in this quarantine time. And like a lot of us have time on our hands and ways that we weren't expecting, and a lot of us are still really busy. But so we just kind of wanted to break it out and make it kind of easy. So basically this is a way that you could make like 3 contacts in one morning. And we have them like tailored for Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. So whichever of our social medias you go on, it will have those like Twitter those handles and those links and stuff for you to go to. But basically just asking you to call the mayor, ask the city why the workhouse is still open, to talk to the city and to talk to the health department. And so we just really want to make sure that we can have ways for you to engage and to still just be really active in this work, because like even though it feels like in a lot of ways things are shutting down, like this is the time where this fight is the most important. And this is the time where I think there's the most leverage for a lot of change, because it's just like a really tense and important point. And so we're going to be continually pushing out things like that. And then since I have my screen, I'll also just talk a little bit about the tweet that Jay was talking about with Mayor Lyda Cruzen, where she kind of walked into a little bit of a trap here, I don't know, and basically said that she wants us to be reporting people who are not complying to her order limiting social gatherings and events of no more than 10 people. to contact the Citizen Service Bureau and at this phone number and this Twitter handle. So again, we sent this out with our information recently in our emails, and I'll send it out again in the one with the information from this meeting. We've actually already had some people call this number, and 2 or 3 of the people who have called have said that the people were really receptive and actually really agreed and like wrote reports up about this, like reporting the mayor. So it's just really important. And one person called and said that the person who they were talking to was kind of frustrated, had a bit of like a negative reaction to that, or was just like a little like, we've heard about this before. And sometimes that can be like off-putting when you're making a call to someone. But the reality is that that anger is misplaced. We shouldn't be mad at us. Like, should be mad at the mayor twofold, because number one, she's the one violating her own order. And number two, she's the one who told us to call. So that's kind of how that goes. But yeah, so this is something that we're also going to be pushing and asking for you all to do as well, because I just think it's just really important to make sure. So that's what I have on my end. Oh, and this will be the sheet that we'll send out to everyone after as well, that has all the mayor, all the alders, President Reed, with all the Twitter handles and all the emails, so that there's nowhere on social media for them to hide from us and to hide from the people who they're supposed to be accountable to. So I'll stop sharing my screen, and that's the things that I had on kind of call to actions.
Yeah, and just echoing tweeting at Lewis Reed and Lida, because we need our elected officials to actually show up if that's what the job that they say that they're going to do. And I think that there's also a chance to take time to follow at each other. If you know other folks in the campaign, to follow each other and check in. Like, did you do your checklist? Did you do your quarantine routine? Did you call the mayor today? We have a raise hands feature. Raise hands if you called the mayor during your quarantine time. Okay, I see 2 hands, 3.
Someone said no by tomorrow. That's good.
Okay.
I like that.
Awesome.
We need to have like virtual gold stickers for people or something, you know? We gotta have some prizes.
I know. We usually give out the yard signs, and we just gotta virtually give
virtual yard sign.
Virtual yard sign. You get one. You get one. Yes.
Wow. Does tweeting the mayor count? Absolutely. 100% counts. But you can add a call on top of that if you want. Someone said, I just emailed Lewis Reed. Thank you. Important.
Props.
Someone said, before class every day I call. Person after my own heart. Thank you so much. Like, that is the work right there. And someone said Cash App. There you go. Yeah, but it's just really important. And this is a time where, and the graphic about the quarantine routine is like funny and everything, but also like, it really did show that like, it could literally be from like 9 to 9:10 in the morning to call, like, actually, I mean, that's an overestimate. It's probably like 9 to 9:03 in the morning, like to make one call, like to call the mayor or to call someone. So, and we have sent out like a 1-pager a lot of times, and I'll probably try and upload it to our page as well, that has lots of information, questions you can ask, just kind of like talking points, like if you ever feel stuck, because the reality is when you call, you don't have to be an expert on the information. It's not that they need to listen to you because you know every single fact and every detail, and if they question you, then like you have to know. It's important because you are a concerned person, a concerned citizen who lives here and who is supposed to be represented by these people in government. And it's really important that we take that power and that power that we have and show them that we're not going to just sit here and let you give us whatever you feel like is okay to give us. Like, we're going to demand what we want and what we need. And if you don't give it to us, then we're not going to stop. We're going to keep calling, keep tweeting, keep emailing, etc.
Yep, until all 136 people are out of that workhouse. I think I want to turn it over for Q&A unless anybody else has anything to add to that.
Can I just add one little spiel? I just want to emphasize this point about where we are at this moment, because Kayla was alluding to the decline earlier, and I just pulled up, we do keep a chart. We keep track of exactly what the numbers have been over time. And from October of 2017 to now, in October of 2017, there were about 600 people in the workhouse and about 1,200 people in jails in the city of St. Louis. And right now, today, there are 100, we keep saying 136, I just double checked today, it went down 4 more, 132 people in the workhouse and 750 people total in the city of St. Louis in jails. And that includes these federal detainees we talk about sometimes, 225 federal detainees that the city is choosing to house, and that number has gone up. And so for months and months and months, we've been hearing from the city of St. Louis, it is not practical to talk about closing the workhouse. This is a pipe dream. You all don't know what you're talking about. Well, there are 750 people, including 225 of those that they don't have to jail, total in jails in this city. And we have a whole second jail in the city of St. Louis with a capacity of 860 people. So right now, for all the reasons we've been talking about, yes, because of the critical health crisis that is COVID-19, but also by any sense of logic, to pay another red cent on a jail that is holding 132 people when we only have 750 in the whole city makes no sense whatsoever. So every single day, that's why we want to be hammering the mayor, the public safety director, the president of the board of aldermen, every individual alder person. They cannot, it should never slip their minds for a second that they have a responsibility to shutter that jail right now, today, to save the people that are in it, and also to save every single dollar that we keep pouring into it. So this context is so, so critical. This is the right moment to do this, even in the midst of everything else that we're wrestling with. They need to close that jail, and we can all see every day on the news that there are many, many, many other things that very much need those resources, and they need them now more than ever. So when people say, well, where are the folks in jail supposed to go? It might be safer in there. What if they don't have anywhere to go? We can put that money into more shelter beds. We can put that money into housing, hotel rooms and motel rooms. We can put that money into what it takes to keep people safe, but we can't continue to put in a jail that we absolutely don't need.
Word. Yeah, I was only going to mention, but I mean, don't need to say much after that, but I was also going to mention that as we enter into April, the city is going to begin its budgeting process. And this is even a time to be targeting those who have spoken vocally about supporting the closure of the workhouse. Darlene Green, the comptroller, you can tweet her and say, hey, it's only 136 people in the workhouse. We appreciate your support. Please push for this to be defunded this budget cycle. And so, right now we have to rely on the tools that are available to us, but they're really, really important tools. We can call, we can text, we can tweet, we can tag, we can Facebook. And this is a time to be also contacting your alder. Why aren't you all having regular meetings right now? There's so much to address in this moment for the pandemic. And before there was a pandemic, we already had too many crises in St. Louis, period. And so we absolutely need our democracy restored. The legislative branch needs to be active. And as the budget process comes up, folks need to be very vocal. So we were not expecting this moment that we're in, but they saw us show up to every hearing and pack the room. They've seen that we've had consistent movement meetings. We even have one now with nearly 30 people on it. And at the same time, there's a really important, it's just really important that we take action. And these are simple asks. These are 5 minutes out of your day, but they really, really do matter that we continue the conversation, because what I can assure you is the reality is that the mayor is hoping that the conversation that we've been holding is pushed to the back burner, and they're able to just move through this budget hearing process, this budget process, and not have to reckon with the organizing and the movement that is the Close the Workhouse campaign. And so remind them that we may not be in the streets, but we will be there upon pandemic passing, but we are on these airwaves and and on this interwebs, and we need to show up as often as possible. So make that an everyday part of your commitment. Make your oatmeal, tweet the mayor, tweet the comptroller, reach out to Lewis Reed, your alderperson, and remind them that they have a responsibility to invest in the lives and the people of St. Louis. And we don't, I find it very ironic. It's kind of disheartening that right now, this is the most vocal and pro everyday people that the city has been. And we shouldn't have to wait for a crisis to consider those who are low wage workers, who are unhoused, who are without insurance. These should be conversations that we're having all the time. And we need to continue to make sure that even in this moment, we're thinking of those who are on Hall Street without clean water, with mold on the walls, and who are only there because they don't have the money to be home. And now families are even more stretched thin because they're not working and no one can pull together bail and rent and money for food while their children are at home. And so we don't want this to continue to devastate people as it's done for far too many years.
Thank you, Blake, and thank you, Kayla, and also Jay. So we have a few questions here. The first question is the BOA Board of Aldermen still meeting regularly with COVID-19? And so pretty sure the answer to that is no, correct, as what we've been saying. I don't know if they have any sort of contingency plan that they've developed yet. And so that's definitely something that we need to be pushing them on and questioning as you're adding them on Twitter, emailing, etc. And if anyone else wants to add to that, feel free. Okay, another person asked, will folks released have the right to vote?
So I'll speak to that.
I was like, okay.
With caveats. So the law in the state of Missouri is that you lose your right to vote when you are convicted, incarcerated, and for the period of time that you're on probation or parole. But it is reinstated upon the completion of a sentence for a felony conviction. The reason I say yes with caveats is the vast majority of people in the workhouse are there pre-trial. The vast majority of people in both jails are there pre-trial, which means if they're released, their actual right to vote was never taken away. Now, they weren't provided any mechanism to vote while they were in the jails because we haven't placed any polling places in the jails, which we should. But the actual right to vote is not stripped away pre-trial. So if they're out, they can vote. If there are folks that are out on probation, they would not be able to vote because in the state of Missouri, your voting rights don't return until you complete that sentence. So it just depends on the individual circumstances, but the vast majority of people could vote.
Perfect, thank you, Blake. Someone said, I know y'all are doing a lot of stuff every day, but I'm wondering if you're going to have any big days of action. I'm thinking if I could set up a virtual phone bank or a few with my networks that are not already plugged in to Close the Workhouse. I just don't know when the best time to do that would be. That's a really good organizing question for us, because this is something that we've talked about doing, like virtual phone banking and stuff once we kind of get our handle on like what this digital organizing format would look like. So I would say that that's something that we're in the works of like planning, like us officially doing one. But if that's something that you want to coordinate with like your groups or your people that you have, I think anytime is a good time in my opinion. I don't know if others have a better sense of like what the best time would be. But I think as far as that goes, any time would be the right time.
Yeah, no, for sure. If somebody wants to set up and reach out to their own network and have a virtual phone, just a tweet day. Please reach out to your network and do that. If you all need any resources from us, as far as like copy or like some talking points, again, the handles will send out but you always have power, and we appreciate reaching out to your own network and doing self-organized things, and look ahead for other group organized things that the organizing team will have.
Blake or Kayla, you want to chime in on that at all?
Yeah, I mean, typically, the best time to call people, or, if you're having your folks call electeds, you want to call them in the daytime. It's unlikely that you're going to call a number and Mayor Lyder Cruzen is going to answer the phone. So really, it's about kind of overwhelming the office to symbolize pressure, like physical. Like if 100 people show up, we want to mirror that with 100 calls. And so you want to try to do that, from the moment that the office opens till it closes. And they're going to be more responsive during those kind of business hours, even right now. So there's still some folks who are operating out of City Hall. And so it's definitely worth calling whenever you can. Even if you call when they're out of the office and leaving messages, they have to come in and answer those messages the next day. But I think for tactical purposes, it's really good to call and get the receptionist where, this person has taken 100 calls today. So whenever the person walks by, they're like, I can't get anything done because I keep answering the phone and all the people who are calling are folks for Close the Workhouse. And so, yeah, just think about it like that. If we were calling, everyday folks about it, then I would say more evening times are best. But if you're calling elected officials, then you want to try to strategically do that on a weekday when staff is in the office, et cetera. And there are lots of things you could do. You can fax a letter, you can email, you can, you can type up an email and send it to 100 of your friends and tell them to send it to this email address. And it's the same mirror, message, but it's packing the inbox because someone has to check that, and it's on formal record when those things happen, when those things are sent through to the mayor's office. And so, just again, and if there's any way that we could be helpful with that, talking points, messaging points, a pre-training before you have your friends make those calls about tactics and support, like reach out to the campaign. That's what the organizers are here for. That's what we're all here for. Be supportive of, constituents, folks, everyday people taking power into their own hands to transform our communities.
Thank you, Kayla.
Yeah, thanks, Kayla. The last question we have for now, at least, is has the bill moved out of the committee, so the Public Safety Committee for Resolution 205? So while we now have the votes for it to move out of committee, the committee is not meeting, has not met again to actually have that vote. So it is technically still kind of stalled in that committee right now. And that's basically where that is.
Yeah, I would just add to that this this whole pandemic has made it very uncertain what the remainder of the legislative sessions look like, whether there will be any movement at all in the legislative session. We'll keep folks updated as we know and as we build strategy around where we are. Currently, we're at a sort of standstill, and it may be that there's no movement. But regardless of what happens in this session with the resolution, our fight looks the same come August 20th, which is the first day of the next session. This was a resolution in any case, not a binding ordinance. And so we want that win. We wanted it then, we want it now. But even if circumstances are such that that resolution can't move, we're still going to be pushing in the budgeting process one way or another. So we'll definitely keep folks posted on that resolution. But we have our sights on the budget cycle for this year.
Thank you, Blake. Does anyone have any other questions? Oh, someone said thank you. You're the best. No, you're the best for joining in and for being a part of the movement and for doing the work. So I just want to reiterate again that this is recorded. Gonna send this out. I'm gonna say that I will send it out tomorrow because there's a lot of things I'd like to compile, so you don't have to get like 14 different emails with all the different details from this meeting. So by tomorrow at noon, you should have an email that'll have this recording as well as a compilation of like all the kind of different links and documents and talking points and things we've talked about today, and just kind of like one big juicy organizing email. So that will be sent out. And someone just asked now, will there be more frequent meetings or just the monthly meeting for now? For now, as what we have thought, we just have the monthly meetings, but as it becomes clear that this is going to be a reality for a while, there's also the potential to have more frequent meetings. So I think it's just going to depend on what we decide as an organizing team, but I would say it's not out of the question. We just haven't discussed it yet.
I just ask for the people on this session. Maybe I'm like setting this up and Madison and Jay are gonna be like, don't ask that. Would you like to have more frequent virtual meetings?
Yeah, you can raise your hands.
For folks?
You can raise your hands.
Yeah, you can raise your hand, comment.
Yes, somebody said weekly.
Okay.
So weekly. I think that, you know, my kind of instant response is one of saying, you know, if there would be kind of rapid response moments now that we're in and entering the budget cycle. So if the president of the Board of Aldermen figures out a way to telecast Board of Aldermen meetings and committees, then we're probably going to have a meeting to prep people on how to engage digitally in those hearings to encourage people to vote yes and target their elected officials and so on. As the Board of E&A is meeting, I believe they have to have around the budget, there has to be a certain number of meetings that are open to the public. And so as they figure that out and disseminate that information, we'll create tactical responses that insert the campaign and strategically position us to get our points across in those moments. And so those kind of, you know, if those switches are hit, we'll have a response. And those may require convening people for prep and organizing and hearing your strategies, because, you know, you all have been engaged and have ideas and know things and have intel right now. And so these are the moments where you could be calling your aldermen, setting up, you know, a 15-minute phone call, having a Zoom cocktail coffee hour with your alder person. They're not meeting, so they have time on their hands, and you may have good information for us. And so I do definitely think that as there's more, you know, not return to normal, but as things semi-stabilize around building the rapid response infrastructure, the city is going to then probably have to answer those questions around the Board of Aldermen and the budget, and we'll be kind of in the paint waiting to leverage those moments for the campaign.
Something that I would just push very highly is just to please be checking your email and our social media pages like really frequently, because like if there's a call to action or if there's something that we need you to do quickly or like right away, that's where we're going to put it. So the other day when Lida went live, we put that on our page. And then within seconds, we had people commenting and asking her questions on the Workhouse. And so many people asked them that she actually answered a question about the Workhouse. So those are going to be the places where we post like our most immediate needs. And so even if you're not typically on social media as much, you're not looking at your email as much, like this is the time where our emails are going to be packed full of a lot of information. So sometimes they might be a little bit longer or might have a few links, but like I really urge you to like look at all of them and look at all the things that are going on, because what we really want to do is give you the tools to like be able to interact and to talk to these officials and just have it be like easy. We don't want it to be this complicated thing. And so just to be making sure to keeping up to date on all that we have on those pages and through the emails. And yes, this person who just put their email, I can definitely add you to the email list. I am not 100. I'm really sure that we will have the emails of everyone who's in this meeting, so we can make sure to add those emails to our listserv that we have that we send out emails from. So, are there any other questions?
If not, I'm gonna take the time to thank everybody. Well, somebody said thank you. Yeah, thank everybody for hopping on this call and being willing to take an hour out of your day as we, try to organize from our homes in our quarantine. I hope that everybody is staying well and safe and healthy and resting and hydrating. Appreciate every one of y'all.
Thanks, everybody. And special thanks to Madison and Jay, plus Inez, who is at home recovering, for organizing all of this, because they put a lot of work into this. So I want to thank you all too.
Yes, thanks, team.
Thank you, Blake and Kayla.
Now everybody go wash your hands.
Yes, everyone, wash your hands.
Rest.
Stay in, social distance, think about others in the moment. Even if you feel like I'm not sick, I should go out. You could be, you don't know. Other people could be susceptible. So just stay in. It's hard, but make some calls, have some friends. The secretaries who are like, on the phone for all these people, like they can become your best friends. So
Yeah.
There you go.
Okay.
all right. Well, if there's no other questions besides telling us that we are awesome, which we appreciate that, y'all are awesome, then I think we can go ahead and sign off for tonight. And then you'll get this video and lots more information and stuff we talked about in an email tomorrow. So thank you all so much for taking the time to be on this call.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.